All right, shalom, 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 and welcome back once again. You are live and direct once again with your Akazaki Yahoo. And as always, I'm giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh Bashem Hamashiach, Wamalak Yahweh Shai, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four corners of the earth. I say shalom, wa baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together, and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. All praises to the Almighty Yah. Hallelujah.
So be it. Hallelujah.
Yes, indeed. I'm joined this evening by my most esteemed Kenaniah. Shalom, Akik.
Hey, Shalom Maki, Shalom Yasharal, call Halal Yahweh, Bahashem Hamashiach wa Malak Yahweh Shah, Barakatham.
Yes, indeed. All praises to Yahweh in the name of his beloved son, Yahweh Shah, Hamashiach, the Messiah, and King, bless you. Yes, indeed. We are back again for another video review, and this particular video comes to us by way of Black Stories Untold. It's a double hitter for us today. This first one is going to be 7 ways slavery still exists, and then we'll get into the second video, the secret slavery America's been hiding from you. All right, so let's get to the first one. Let's get to it and through it. All praises to the Most High. Here we go.
Slavery ended over 150 years ago. Or did it? What if I told you that every single day you see, hear, and maybe even do things that were born from the chains of slavery? What if the way some of us talk, dress, think about ourselves, and treat each other remains under the control of dead slave masters? Today, we're about to uncover 7 shocking ways that slavery didn't just end in 1865. It transformed, evolved, and embedded itself so deep into our minds and culture that we're still living under its shadow. Here's the thing. Once we see these chains, we can break them. We are a powerful people, and knowledge is our freedom. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a poisonous tree that was chopped down, but its roots were left deep in the soil. Those roots didn't die. They kept growing underground, poisoning everything that tried to grow in that same soil. That tree was slavery, and we're still dealing with its toxic roots today. For over 400 years, our ancestors endured the most brutal, dehumanizing system ever created. Those white supremacist slave masters stole our bodies and tried to steal our minds. They created lies, stereotypes, and twisted behaviors designed to make us hate ourselves and each other. The sickening truth? Some of these psychological weapons are still working today. We're here to wake up, stand up, and break these mental chains once and for all. Let's start with something that might shock you. One of the most common curse words in America, mother, has roots that go straight back to the slave plantations. Family, the truth behind this word is absolutely horrifying. During slavery, those demonic slave masters had a special punishment for Black men who dared to rebel or try to escape. They would force these men, our fathers, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, into unwanted acts with their own mothers and female relatives. Can you imagine that level of psychological torture? This went beyond physical abuse. The goal was destroying the very soul of Black manhood. It would make other slaves watch. They would make families refer to these broken men as mother. Pure psychological warfare designed to strip away every ounce of dignity and humanity. Today, this word has spread everywhere. People throw it around without knowing they're using a term from the abuse of our ancestors. Every time we use this word casually, we unconsciously carry forward the language of our own dehumanization. Now you know, knowledge is power. We can choose to break this cycle and honor our ancestors by refusing to perpetuate the language created to destroy them. Now let's talk about something you see every single day in our communities. Sagging pants. What started as a fashion statement in the 90s has a history that will make your stomach turn. Sagging pants started on those same slave plantations. When a Black man was caught trying to escape or showing any form of resistance, Those 6 slave masters had another twisted punishment called buckbreaking or buckbusting. They would force these proud black men to lower their pants in front of everyone, other slaves, women, children, and then force themselves upon them. After this horrific act, the victim was forced to keep wearing his pants without a belt, as a permanent mark of humiliation. This served as a walking advertisement to every slave. This is what happens when you resist. The sagging pants became a symbol declaring, I have been broken, I have been conquered, I am no longer a man. Fast forward to today. Young black men wear sagging pants thinking it looks cool or gangsta, unaware that they're wearing the uniform of sexual humiliation. They unconsciously advertise their own defeat without realizing the history behind this style. Our ancestors wore those sagging pants because they had no choice. We do have a choice. Every time we pull up our pants, we pull up our pride, our dignity, and our power. Now, we need to talk about our queens, black women, and how slavery created one of the most damaging stereotypes that continues destroying lives today, the Jezebel myth. During slavery, white men regularly forced themselves upon black women. Here's the sick part. They needed to justify their crimes. So they created the lie that black women were naturally hypersexual, promiscuous, and seductive. They painted our queens as Jezebels who supposedly wanted and enjoyed the abuse. This went beyond victim blaming. This was psychological warfare. They took the biblical Queen Jezebel and twisted her story to make it seem like black women were inherently immoral and uncontrollable. This poison didn't die with slavery. Today, black women still fight against being over-sexualized in media, being seen as aggressive when they speak up, or being dismissed as ghetto when they don't fit respectability politics. Look at how black women are portrayed in music videos, movies, and social media. The same hypersexualized, one-dimensional images that slave masters created to justify unwanted advances are now being sold as empowerment. Our queens are not Jezebels. They are the mothers of civilization, the backbone of our community, and the most disrespected and unprotected women on this planet. Time has come for us to see them, and for them to see themselves through the lens of their true royalty, instead of through the distorted mirror of slavery. Let's talk money, family. One of slavery's most effective weapons against us today comes in the form of the welfare queen stereotype. During slavery, masters constantly called slaves lazy to justify working them like animals for no pay. They said we were naturally shiftless and needed white supervision to be productive. Sound familiar? Fast forward to the 1970s. Politicians needed a way to cut social programs, so they resurrected the same lie. They found one woman, Linda Taylor, who committed welfare fraud, and they turned her into the face of every black woman needing government assistance. Suddenly, every black mother struggling to feed her children was labeled a welfare queen, lazy, manipulative, having babies for money. The same lies slave masters used to justify free labor were now being used to justify cutting the social safety net. Here's what's crazy. The biggest recipients of government assistance in America have always been white people. Somehow we became the face of government dependency. The truth remains clear. Our people built this country for free. We are owed. Reparations are a debt payment that's centuries overdue, plain and simple. Now we need to address the elephant in the room, the Uncle Ruckus mentality. If you don't know who Uncle Ruckus is, he's that character from the Boondocks who hates everything black and worships everything white. This mentality didn't come from nowhere. During slavery, masters deliberately created psychological programming to make slaves hate themselves and their blackness. They rewarded slaves who informed on each other, who adopted white speech patterns, who distanced themselves from African culture. Today, this shows up as black people saying things like, I don't see color, or I'm different from other black people, or believing that speaking proper English means sounding white. Colorism also emerges from this, preferring lighter skin over darker skin. Most of us have been through an Uncle Ruckus phase. Unless you were raised in a household pumping black pride into you from day one, you probably went through a period of wanting to distance yourself from blackness, wishing your hair was different, trying to fit into white spaces. This behavior stems from trauma, plain and simple. When you're told for 400 years that everything about you is inferior, your mind develops defense mechanisms. Sometimes that means rejecting your own identity to survive. Healing starts with awareness. When we recognize this programming, we can deprogram ourselves. We can fall in love with our blackness again, our features, our culture, our history, our power. Then we have the Tom mentality. People who say, I don't see color, or show up to Black Lives Matter rallies with All Lives Matter signs. Colorblindness sounds nice, but it's actually dangerous. When you refuse to see race, you refuse to see racism. Think of someone saying, I don't see your broken arm, while stepping on it. This mentality often develops as a survival mechanism. During segregation, some Black people learned that downplaying race and trying to fit in was safer than confronting racism directly. Today, this shows up in interracial relationships where the Black partner never talks about race. In workplaces where Black employees don't report discrimination to keep the peace. In families where discussing racism is seen as dwelling on the past. Silence doesn't heal wounds, it hides them. We need to see color, acknowledge racism, and fight it head on. The way to end racism involves dismantling the systems that perpetuate it, which means talking about it openly and honestly. Finally, let's talk about what science is now proving, that trauma can be passed down through generations. Dr. Joy DeGruy identified this as post-traumatic slave syndrome. PTSS shows up in three main ways: vacant esteem, feeling worthless, propensity for anger and violence, especially within our own community, and racist socialization, believing white is right. Think about this. Our ancestors survived the most brutal system imaginable. They had to develop survival behaviors that helped them endure unwanted advances, torture, family separation, and constant dehumanization. Some of those survival behaviors got passed down even when they were no longer needed. This might show up as depression that seems to come from nowhere, explosive anger over small things, or feeling like you're never good enough, no matter what you achieve. Sometimes it appears as Black on Black violence because we were taught that other Black people were competition instead of community. Here's the beautiful thing. If trauma can be inherited, so can resilience. We come from people who survived the impossible. We have warrior DNA, survivor genetics, overcomer blood running through our veins. Family, we've just taken a journey through some dark territory. We've seen how the poisonous roots of slavery still affect our language, our clothing, our self-image, and our psychology. I know this is heavy. I know it hurts to realize how deep this programming goes. The truth, even when painful, is the only thing that can set us free. Here's what those slave masters never understood. They could break our bodies, but they couldn't break our spirit. We are the descendants of people who survived the Middle Passage, who built pyramids, who created mathematics and medicine and music that still moves the world. We don't have to remain victims of our history. Every time we choose knowledge over ignorance, unity over division, self-love over self-hatred, we break another chain. Imagine a generation of Black people who know their true history, who love their Blackness unapologetically, who refuse to carry forward the programming of their oppressors. That generation starts with us. That generation starts with you. So the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to stay asleep, or are we going to wake up? Are we going to stay broken, or are we going to rise up? We are the chosen people. We are the powerful people. Time has come for the world and for we ourselves to start acting like it. If this video opened your eyes, share it. If it broke some chains in your mind, break the like button. If you're ready to join this awakening, subscribe and ring that notification bell.
All right, man, praises to the Most High. That is probably one of the best videos I've seen in a long time. All praises to the Most High. Man, where did I even begin? You know, the heavy drop of knowledge. This brother got to be in the truth. Got to be in the truth. I mean, it's too many hints, not enough subtlety. But Man, kind. Yeah, I concur with this entire video, with all of those talking points. You know that that MF word. That's a big deal. That's a
Hmm.
big deal, and I would never let uh, somebody call me that without me addressing it. You know what I'm saying? Without me clarifying, that's you don't have the right to call me that because I ain't never done such. Uh, I call you that because you probably do it on a regular. You doggone heathen. But but anyway, uh, that one hit home. Second pants, I thought that was something when I was a child, but as a grown man, that's just ridiculous behavior. In the truth, out of the truth, anything. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Uh, but man, there was so much to learn from this. And then talking about the women, our sisters. I don't like the term queens. I don't perpetuate that term because there were no queens in Israel, save the one lady who tried to steal it with murder, and Jezebel. Uh, people love to talk about Hannah, not Hannah, but Hadassah, but she wasn't married to an Israelite. She was married to king of what's the name of that place?
Persian Empire.
Yes, Persia. Man, I can never remember the Persians. Yeah, she was married to the king of Persia. But so there are no queens in Israel. The two women who were actually queens in Israel were very wicked women. And then the one woman who was righteous, she was married to a heathen. So I don't associate that term with my people. Uh, Plus, the king can have many wives. So are they all queens? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. You're the king's wife. That's your position. That's the best position you can have, the king's wife. So, uh, yeah. Anyhow, good stuff, man. Really good stuff. I definitely want to watch this video again. It was too short. I think that's the only thing negative I can say about it is it certainly could have been longer. As always, links in the description box. And man, Toda, all praises to the Most High first of all, and then Toda Rabbi the water to the brothers who hooked this video up, went through the editing and put it all together. Uh, Masterful and brilliant work. Keep up good work. I'm looking forward to seeing more from Black Stories Untold. Go ahead, Akeem.
Khan, I would really just, concur with, what you had to say right there. It's really despicable thing to be called a MFer.
Yeah.
However, we were ignorant when we were younger, but now, understanding where that comes from, it's something that shouldn't come forth from our mouths.
Yeah.
Something else that I like about, coming into this walk, we used to, well, I speak for myself, used to be too loose with the NIGGA word, with speaking to one another. But coming into truth and understanding, you no longer use words like that. The only thing that I would critique with this brother's video would be, he talked about how we came from warriors and a strong people, which is what why he says we were able to survive. I disagree with that partially. The reason that we survived, well, our plight was prophecy. It was told to us what was going to happen, and the Most High said that He would also preserve some from the sword and some from the captivity. So that's why we survived. It was the Most High's grace being bestowed upon us, even in correction. The love of a father, but I'll yield there.
Indeed, Doc, and that was a good point. I didn't recall him. I recall him saying about we're survivors because of that, but yeah, that was a really good point to pull out. Yeah, because that's one I definitely overlooked that one. So, but all praises to the Most High. We're gonna continue this next video, still from Black Stories Untold, the Secret Slaves America been hiding from you. So we'll get to this video to get to it and get through it. Same group, same people, same brothers. So here we go.
It was a hot spring day in Alabama as Green Cottonham walked the familiar path home. He was 22, born to parents who remembered the taste of slavery. Now he was making his way back from visiting family, following the tracks like countless other travelers in the South. A sheriff's deputy appeared on the horizon. In seconds, Green's life changed forever. The charge? Vagrancy, a crime invented after the Civil War with a simple definition: being black and unemployed. Within days, he was sentenced to hard labor in the coal mines of Alabama. Green Cottonham disappeared into slope number 12 of the Pratt Mines, working for U.S. Steel Corporation. He never saw his family again. And this was in 1908, over 40 years after slavery was supposedly abolished in America. But this was just another casualty in a system that was supposed to have ended already. So, you're sitting in history class, learning about how Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves and how America moved past its darkest chapter. But what if I told you that's not where the story ends? What if I told you that for decades after the Civil War, hundreds of thousands of Black Americans were forced back into chains through a system that was arguably worse than slavery itself? This isn't some conspiracy theory. This is the story of how America's most powerful industries and government officials worked together to create a new form of slavery, one that would persist well into the 20th century, a system so profitable that it helped build some of the largest companies we know today, but also insanely brutal that even former slave owners admitted it was worse than slavery. This is the story of how slavery never really ended in America. April 9th, 1865. After 4 bloody years of civil war that pit North against South, the Confederate states surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. The Union, the northern states fighting to preserve the country, had defeated the Confederate states that broke away to protect slavery. With the Union's victory, 4 million Black Americans were finally freed from their chains. Or at least, that's how the story goes in your history books. This wasn't just a military victory either. It was meant to be a complete transformation of American society. With the approval of the 13th Amendment in December 1865, followed by the 14th Amendment in 1868, Black Americans were finally considered as citizens with constitutional rights. The 15th Amendment in 1870 guaranteed their vote. They called it radical Reconstruction. The federal government stationed 38,000 troops across the South. This military presence enabled an unprecedented transformation. By 1870, over 1,000 Black politicians were serving in state and federal offices. Think about this. Just 5 years earlier, these men were considered property. Now, Hiram Revels, born to free Black parents in North Carolina, was taking the Senate seat once held by Jefferson Davis, the former president of the Confederacy. And he wasn't alone in this. Blanche K. Bruce, a man born into slavery in Virginia, would join Revels as the second Black U.S. Senator. For the first time in American history, Black citizens were helping write the nation's laws from its highest chambers of power. But beneath this facade of progress, the South was already plotting its revenge. See, the plantation owners had a problem. Their entire economy was built on slave labor. And now that slavery was technically illegal, they needed to find creative solutions. Their first move? Take advantage of the fact that most freed slaves couldn't read. Former slave owners would present these elaborate labor contracts to freedmen, claiming they were fair employment agreements. In reality, these contracts often included conditions that were basically slavery with extra steps. Workers could be locked in cells at night, chained up, forbidden from leaving the property, forced to speak in a servile manner, and accept whatever punishment their employer deemed necessary. Perhaps no one described this brutal transition better than Patsy Mitchner, a former slave interviewed in 1937. Here's what she said. Slavery was a bad thing, And freedom, of the kind we got with nothing to live on, was bad. Two snakes full of poison, one lying with his head pointing north, the other with his head pointing south. Their names were slavery and freedom. Both bit the Negro, and they were both bad. But this was just the beginning. Across the South, state legislatures were passing what they called black codes, laws that looked neutral on paper, but were designed specifically to trap Black Americans in a new kind of bondage. Then came 1876. The presidential election split the country, with Republican Rutherford B. Hayes and Democrat Samuel Tilden both claiming victory. Southern Democrats saw their opportunity. They struck a deal. They would accept Hayes as president on one condition: all federal troops had to leave the South. And just like that, the Black Americans that tasted freedom that was rightfully theirs were now facing the threat of slavery again, only under a different banner. And let me be real for a second. This video only scratches the surfaces of the horrors of this system. If you're interested in learning the whole story, check out Douglas Blackmon's book, Slavery by Another Name, a detailed telling of the horrors of convict leasing and debt peonage. Click the link down below in the description to find it. In 1877, Hayes ordered the last federal troops to withdraw, and that was the end of the radical Reconstruction era. And for Black Americans, this was again the beginning of a nightmare. With federal troops gone, Southern states were free to enforce their black codes with impunity. These weren't just some Jim Crow segregation laws. No, these were carefully crafted legal traps designed to criminalize Black existence itself. Take something as simple as getting to work. The South's road system was primitive, so the easiest way to travel was along railroad tracks. But for Black citizens, that was now trespassing. Try to hop on a freight train without a ticket? That's another crime. Even carrying a razor in your pocket, something any barber or working man might need, could land you in chains. And once you were arrested, the system was designed to ensure conviction. Black citizens had no right to legal representation. They faced all-white juries. By 1890, the results were staggering. In Alabama's coal mining region, a survey of convicts showed the most common crimes were things like carrying a concealed weapon, gambling, using offensive language, and the biggest catch-all, vagrancy, the crime of being unemployed. And this was all created for profit. Remember all of those Confederate business owners who lost their slave labor? They'd found a new source: convict leasing. Let's look at the Chattahoochee Brick Company in Atlanta. Under the scorching Georgia sun, convict laborers were forced to produce 300,000 bricks every single day. The work was so brutal that children were specifically chosen for certain tasks. Their small bodies could fit inside the smoking hot kilns. The company's owner, James W. English, was a former Confederate officer who became one of Atlanta's wealthiest men through this system. In Alabama's coal mines, it was even worse. The Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company worked their convict laborers to death. Literally. The Coalburg mine had an annual death rate of 30%, meaning if you sentenced 100 men to work there, 30 would be dead within a year. That's one death every 12 days. And unlike slave owners who had financial incentive to keep their human property alive, these companies could simply request more convicts to replace the dead. But perhaps the most insidious part of this system is that it worked exactly as designed. By the 1890s, the myth of Black criminality had spread far beyond the South. Remember how Northerners before the Civil War described Black Americans? Words like loyal, dutiful, reliable. But by century's end, the narrative had completely changed. Instead, they now used words like brute, thug, and savages to describe Black people. Proof that the horrible lost cause narrative had managed to craft an image of Black people that was villainous and barbaric. By 1900, the system had achieved its goal. The same Southern industrialists who once bought slaves were now leasing convicts for pennies a day. The same racial hierarchy that slavery once maintained was now preserved through a new system of legal slavery. In Alabama's 1890 survey, even the official records reveal the absurdity. 11 convicts for false pretense, which meant quitting your job. 7 for the crime of interracial relationships, and 24 for using obscene language. Think about this. Today, if you're arrested, you face a trained judge in a formal courtroom. But in the South after 1877, your fate was decided by what they called a justice of the peace. And this could be your local innkeeper, tailor, or grocery store owner, suddenly having the power to sentence you to prison. These were regular townspeople, often plantation owners themselves, who were basically given a side job of playing judge. It's like if your boss could also arrest you and declare you guilty of a crime. In Alabama, records show that the largest category of convict laborers was listed simply as not given. They didn't even bother writing down the supposed crime. The system was so blatantly corrupt that in 1890, when the state surveyed convicts in the Pratt mines, they found people imprisoned for crimes like selling cotton after sunset or speaking too loudly in the presence of white women. The message was clear. They didn't need a real crime to put you in chains. And once they had you, they put you to work into building the new industrial South. In Georgia, convicts produced the bricks that literally rebuilt Atlanta. In Alabama, they mined the coal that fueled America's steel industry. In Florida, they harvested turpentine from pine trees. In Texas, they cut the sugarcane. And all the while, Northern newspapers began repeating Southern narratives about Black criminality. Before the Civil War, Northern whites had generally viewed Black Americans as hardworking and reliable. But now, the image transformed into what one paper called a lascivious beast roaming the country. By 1915, when D.W. Griffith released Birth of a Nation, the narrative transformation was complete. The film portrayed the Confederacy's defeat as a tragedy and the Klan as heroes protecting society from supposedly violent Black men. President Woodrow Wilson even screened it at the White House, calling it history written with lightning. The film's impact went beyond propaganda. The Klan, which had been effectively destroyed in the 70s, saw a massive revival. The movie even invented their most famous symbol, the burning cross, which the original Klan had never used. Meanwhile, the convict leasing system had become so profitable that by 1898, nearly 73% of Alabama's entire state revenue came from leasing convicts. Major corporations like U.S. Steel were building their fortunes on this forced labor. The system was so brutal that even former slave owners admitted it was worse than slavery. After all, slaves were expensive property worth protecting, but convict laborers could simply be replaced when they died. But if you think the system died out with the Victorian era, you're in for a shock. Because in the 20th century, it was about to expand into something even more sinister. And this time, it wouldn't just be the South doing it. By the way, if you've enjoyed the content so far and would like to see more untold Black stories, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. It would mean the world to us and help spread our message. By the dawn of the 20th century, what started as a Southern scheme had grown into a massive industrial operation. The numbers are staggering. Over 800,000 people were caught in this system of neo-slavery. That's 1/5 of all the people who had been freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, now trapped in a new form of bondage. Think about that for a second. The South had literally re-enslaved 20% of the people who were supposed to be free. And they did it all completely legally. So how were they able to do all of this at such an unprecedented scale? Let's use the story of John Davis from Alabama. In 1901, Davis was just walking down a road, trying to reach his dying wife's bedside. But a crooked local constable claimed Davis owed him money. That was all it took. Davis never made it to see his wife. Instead, he became another cog in what became known as the debt peonage system. This system was built on deception. You'd be arrested on some trumped-up charge, maybe vagrancy because you were walking on a railroad track, or gaming because you were caught playing dice. The justice of the peace, as we talked about before, was usually in on the scheme. He'd find you guilty and impose a massive fine. But don't worry, some kind white plantation owner or industrialist would step in and offer to pay your fine if you signed a contract to work it off. What they didn't tell you was that every bit of food they fed you, every scrap of clothing they gave you, every night's lodging, it all got added to your debt. The more you worked, the more you somehow owed. People would end up working for years trying to pay off what started as a $10 fine. Warren Reese, a federal prosecutor who investigated these operations, described it perfectly in 1903. These violations have not been confined to one or two periodical and independent instances, but it has developed into a miserable business and custom to catch up ignorant and helpless Negro men and women upon the flimsiest and most baseless charges. The victims would be placed into a condition of involuntary servitude, locked up at nights in a cell, worked under guards during the day from 3 o'clock in the morning until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, whipped in a most cruel manner, insufficiently fed or poorly clad. And if someone tried to escape, dogs would be set on their trail. When caught, they'd face even worse treatment. As their contract neared its end, they'd suddenly be arrested again on new charges, starting the cycle all over. And that was how those major corporations like U.S. Steel and Tennessee Coal were able to do what they did. When companies were finally brought to court, they had a brilliant defense. They argued that since the debts they used to hold workers were fictitious, this wasn't debt peonage at all, it was slavery. And incredibly, this defense worked. Because while the 13th Amendment had abolished slavery, it hadn't made it a crime. And so the system continued, decade after decade, becoming more entrenched in the American industry. It would take something completely unexpected to finally bring it down. December 7th, 1941, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, which forces America into World War II. But as President Roosevelt gathered his cabinet to discuss the coming war, he faced an uncomfortable question. What would the enemy use against the United States in the propaganda war? The answer was obvious: America's treatment of black citizens. How could the U.S. claim moral superiority over how Japan was treating the Chinese or Koreans when we had our own subjugated underclass? Just 5 days after Pearl Harbor, Roosevelt's Justice Department issued Circular 3591. This memo completely changed how prosecutors would approach these cases. For decades, attempts to prosecute these practices had failed because companies would argue it wasn't debt peonage. Now, the Justice Department told prosecutors to stop calling it peonage and start calling it what it was: involuntary servitude and slavery. The memo unleashed a wave of prosecutions across the country. Within months, dozens of cases were opened. But out of all of them, one case would mark the final chapter of this dark history. In September 1942, on a farm outside of Beeville, Texas, federal agents discovered a man named Alfred Irving. He had been held as a slave by the Skrobarczyk family for at least 4 years. They had starved him, beaten him with chains, whips, and ropes until he was permanently disfigured. The family was found guilty and sent to federal prison. And just like that, with the conviction of the Skrobarczyk family, Alfred Irving became the last chattel slave to be freed in America. Not an indentured servant, not a convict laborer, not a debt peon, but a slave in every sense of the word. Think about that timeline for a moment. The last slave in America wasn't freed in 1865. They were freed in 1942. To put that into perspective, Joe Biden was born just 2 months later, and even then, the fight was far from over. Decades later, and Black Americans still had to drink from separate water fountains. Segregation wouldn't end until the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 finally allowed Black citizens to vote again. But just a few years after that, President Nixon launched his war on drugs, which would disproportionately target and imprison Black Americans on purpose. By an ironic twist of history, it took the threat of German propaganda to end one system of forced labor in America. But another system was already waiting to take its place. the modern prison industrial complex. But that's for another video. So, when did slavery really end in America? The history books will tell you it's 1865, but the truth is, the last slave wasn't freed until 1942. It's not ancient history, that's within living memory. And before Black Americans could even process this trauma, the system was already evolving. Here's what Nixon's domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman, later admitted about the war on drugs. The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and Black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with and Blacks with and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. See the pattern? From the slave codes to the Black codes to the war on drugs. It's a continuum of oppression against Black Americans. The methods change, but the results stay the same. Why haven't we gotten reparations? We're clearly owed them. The United States government has swept us under the rug for far, far too long. Since the colonial days, the laws of this country have been used to force Black people into a permanent underclass. For the first 100 years after independence, the Constitution not only allowed but protected slavery. And immediately after it was abolished, the criminal justice system was twisted into a tool for extracting as much labor and wealth from Black people as possible. This system created generations of people who rightfully fear going out alone and have learned not to expect help from authorities. They don't trust the police and have lost all faith in the criminal justice system. And who can blame them? For almost 100 years, the primary purpose of the judicial system was to coerce Black people into meeting the labor demands and social customs of the white majority. This created a century-old myth about Black criminality that persists to this day. When white people notice the obvious inequality in our country and wonder why Black people haven't caught up yet, despite slavery ending over 150 years ago, they're wrong. It ended 80 years ago. This version of history, the true version, explains much more about current racial inequality than the sanitized story we learn in school. We go from the Pilgrims to the Revolution to the Civil War, and then jump straight to Martin Luther King ending racism. But I can assure you, no child today is learning about what really happened. There are history teachers watching this right now who have never heard about debt peonage. The full story makes so much more sense, which is exactly why it isn't taught. Because if we understood this history, we might actually demand some changes. If you're interested about more Black history America has conveniently erased, check out our video about Florida and their erasure of Black history from their textbooks. Pretty crazy stuff if you ask me. Anyways, this was Black Stories Untold, and as always, thanks for watching.
All right, all praises once again to the Most High. Interesting bit of information there as it pertains to, man, the last slave in America, 1940?
I don't remember what year he said, but I thought about that movie where there was a sister that had just realized that slavery was abolished, like in the 70s.
Yeah, indeed. I'm trying to see what year. Yeah, he said 1940 something. My grandfather passed away in 1969 before I was born. I was born in 79. He passed away a decade before I was born. So 20 years, 20 some odd years. Exactly. My apologies. 20 some odd years before that, or less than 20 years before that, he was, no, it was 20 plus years. So I forget what he said. I'm going to go back to that. But, man, that was deep. I want to say 1942. He said 6 months. Well, 2 months before Joe Biden's birthday.
Mm.
Is what he said. I was like, what? So yeah, I'm about to go back to that. That's too interesting. But yeah. So I thought he was going to talk about just the industrial prison complex, and that was what was going to be talked about. But no, he went into something completely different. Uh, man, this is one of those videos you definitely got to watch and take notes on, because a lot of this information, I'm sure that our people are not privy to, have not been made, aware of, and that's a big deal. Here we are thinking slavery ended 18 something, but nah, no, they was jamming our people on ridiculous ideas long after that, long after that point, and had this brother in um, in chains in slavery, and not just him, it was others, but he was the last one that they would allow it to happen to. 19, let's see, he said 1940. That's what he said, 1940. So it was 1940 something. But I'm gonna find that out. Wow, that's crazy. You know what? Go ahead, I'm gonna Google it and see what I can see.
Con, I'm thinking, in the 40s, I mean, it sounds crazy to us, 2025. However, if we were to speak to our grandparents and our elders that were around back then, I'm sure that they could attest to the climate of that time, and how the treatment that they received. You know what I mean? Being less than 100 years after slavery was abolished. You know what I mean? In America. If certain people had their way, like what's going on in Florida, they would erase all of this from history, for it to become a myth. You know what I mean?
Right.
The captives would be relabeled into immigrants, which is something that they try to do often enough. You know,
Yeah.
uh, I think this is a subject that we could spend hours upon hours talking about,
Right.
and how these institutions still survive today in the penal system here in America.
Yeah.
And if we were to just look at that, we would find some troubling information. How these private prisons are run by the same people who are a part of record label administration. You know what I mean? Like those record label reps are in bed with the same people who are making money off of private prisons.
Right. Indeed.
Which is, one day we're gonna get fed up. All right, one day we're gonna get fed up with it all. I don't know. It probably won't be before Mashiach returns. You know what I mean? Because when he comes back, he's definitely going to be fed up. But in closing, uh, this week has been very telling on what people throughout the world really believe. And we ask people, if we were to ask people if they know the Most High, they would say, "Yeah, I know God."
Right.
You had millions, I don't know, I say millions of people expecting for a rapture to take place this week. And we know that the Most High talks about making people believe a lie.
Right.
And then in Second Thessalonians, it speaks about turning people over to strong delusion. When you're in this country and you have taken gain off of the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors, it lets me know that you truly don't know the Most High.
Right.
Because if you truly knew him, you would understand that he is a power of justice.
Justice.
I say justice because you look at the people in the world that have been mistreated by other races, and there's been some sort of compensation.
Right.
I remember 10 years, well, probably closer to 20 years ago, the subject of reparations coming up. And many Americans said that they would gladly fight a war to ensure that reparations weren't delivered to our people.
They will.
You have no idea what the scriptures say, and you have no idea of the person you worship, what you don't know. I'll just leave it there.
Right. That's a very brilliant point. And it looks like on the video it said 1942 was the last slave. He said 2 months later Biden was born when that last brother was let go. So shameful situation as it pertains to what you were bringing out. A false balance. A false balance is an abomination to Yahweh, but a just weight is his delight. So you create a false balance, you create a lie, and say that it is equal. Say this is proper. But he says a just weight, a weight that is what it should be, is his delight. So if you feel like you want to go to war over reparations, you will, but it won't be against us. It'll be against Mashiach. It'll be against the Mashiach. It'll be against the Messiah. See, it's easy to say, we can fight a war when you got a military and you got a people who don't have a military. We don't have a military this moment, but we got a military. It's comprised of Hamashiach, the Messiah, and
Yahweh Zabaoth.
the Khan, Yahweh of hosts.
That's right.
Of armies. So, and his army is going to be 144,000, 12,000 from all the tribes of the children of Israel. And that's what you got to look forward to. That's the war that you would be willing to engage in. A war that there's no way in the world that you can win. But that's what you want against us. You want a war against us that we can't win because we got to depend on you for on this society for the things that we need. Well, I'm gonna tell you that that's not forever. That's for now. So enjoy it while you have it because it won't last. The reality is coming, and Hamashiach is coming. And once he shows up, this thing is over.
That's right.
All of this all the injustice is over with against this people. And then the reins turn. The reins turn. What's your term? It ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun.
That's right.
A rabbit can't do nothing with a gun. But guess who can? Guess who won't even need a gun? The children of Israel. Because we're going to have new bodies, glorified bodies, the same body that Hamashiach coming back with. According to Thessalonians, that's what we're going to be. That's what we're going to have. When he shall return, we shall be like him. That's what Shaul's understanding was. So, I can't even break a sweat dealing with these degenerate people because they think for some odd reason, in some way, that they think they got an advantage, and that's what all the time they want to deal with things. Well, you're gonna lose. If you don't think you got an advantage, you're gonna lose. As soon as it happens, as soon as it go down, it's over. It's over. So, all praises to the Most High. That is the architect of all these things that we have endured and will finish with in our last hurrah. All right. All right. We covered enough. I said, well, we almost an hour. I thought it was gonna be like, 40 minutes, but it's all good. We had a little bit to get out. So I'm gonna go ahead and close it on out. You got any final things?
All praises to the Most High for all that he's done, all that he's doing. and all that he will do. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. We do this for a specific purpose. Romans chapter 10 and verse 1. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to the Abba for Israel is that they might be saved. We want to see our people saved. We want to see our people set free. We want to see our people restored to the prominence that the Most High have promised us. How we're going to do it? First of all, we're going to keep the faith and the belief in Hamashiach, the Messiah, to return and do that which the Most High have promised to us that he would do. Secondly, Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Let us, in the conclusion of the whole matter, fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. It is so very important to understand that in the conclusion of the whole matter, we are to fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. At the end of the day, when it is all said and done, all the dust is settled, and all the smoke is cleared, we will be judged, or rather we have feared the Most High and kept his commandments. Why? Because this is the whole duty of man. I am your Akazaki Yahu, joined by my most esteemed Akinanaya, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahweh Bashem Hamashiach Wamalak, Yahweh Shai, heir to the 12 tribes of Israel, who are scattered to the four quarters of the earth. I say Shalom, Wa Baruki, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, Shalom, family.
Shalom, Mr. Pekah.
All praises to the Most High. Praise you, Abba Yah. Kwam Yasha Allah.
Kwam Yasha Allah.
And Barak Hashem Yahweh.